actually some of those costs aren't actual costs. They're just, they're opening up the hall, and so therefore they have to charge us a certain amount.
Yeah. Well, Regional Facilities Auckland is suggesting it's having to revise opening hours and service levels at the Art Gallery, the Zoo, Auckland stadiums. It just doesn't have the funding.
Well, that's outrageous to say that they don't have the funding for that. And yet, here we are looking at a massive yacht race. And don't get me wrong, I love America's Cup and I love all that kind of thing. But, these children, 4,500 children across Auckland, that's a tiny little skid across the whole of Auckland schools. They get this incredible opportunity. Well, to miss this opportunity, it seems like they're, nickel and diming, and it does feel like the priorities aren't there. And disappointingly, I did invite the Mayor to attend. I also then was told he was already booked up, and then the next person down, and then the next person down. So Auckland Live, I emailed the CEO directly. He hasn't even got back to me. So I don't think they understand what this event is about and what this does for our city.
The city councillors themselves don't seem happy, judging by early reportage. I mean, they've identified $337 million of efficiency savings they think could be trimmed from council spending. So you're talking about priorities, aren't you? Do you suspect that councils always find the money for what they want to find the money for?
I'm sure they do, and we're not saying we're not going to pay anything or we can't pay a little bit of an increase, but to go to that level really does make it an undoable event. And there has to be some social responsibility on the council's part to meet some of those costs. If those are the so-called actual costs, which they're not, but if, say, they were, then surely they have some capacity to say, we need to support this event to half of the value or a third or whatever.
I understand. Okay, a quick question to go. Fiona's suggestion, could you apply elsewhere for grants? Could you find sponsorship yourself? You must have thought of that.
Well, I'm a principal of a school, right? And all of the people on the committee as well, we all run schools. And if you could tell me at what time I've got to do that, we're doing this as volunteers. Yeah. And the choir conductors, they're all, there isn't, I guess the answer would be yes, I could, but then what do I do? Does my school sacrifice? Because filling out grant forms, if you know anything about that, there's a lot of paperwork involved.
Yeah, exactly.
It shouldn't go down to that. The city should value it to the point where they're going to support and back us.
All right. Nice to talk with you. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Leanne Callister, the principal of Howick Primary, chair of the Auckland Primary Schools Music Festival. Did her arguments convince both of you?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I'm fairly confident actually that someone will have heard this interview with Leanne and will pick up the phone and give her a hand. I feel like there'll be someone out there that does that after.
It sort of feels a little bit like perhaps you're almost throwing the babies out with the bathwater here.
Just before we go, 38th anniversary of New Zealand's worst peacetime disaster, the Mount Erebus flight. Now, the Prime Minister today gave the National Memorial the go-ahead. She wants a memorial in place by the 40th anniversary in 2 years' time. It's high time, she says. You would agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's going to...
I remember the day very well.
Yeah, well, I didn't get time to ask you, but a lot of people have a lot of memories of Erebus. But I hear the music. Chris Waikato, always lovely to have your company.
Thank you.
Fiona Fraser, you too.
Nice to see you.
Nice to have you on again, Fiona. That's us for another day. We're back tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Checkpoint coming up with John Campbell.
Kia ora everyone, welcome to what will be Checkpoint in about 8 minutes. Tonight, a powerful interview with the mother of a 23-year-old man who died a fortnight ago after using synthetic drugs. Natasha Sadler said she tried to get her son into rehab but was told there weren't enough beds, and we've checked, there are not. A mother who took her daughter to the doctors and emergency departments over 80 times before a child protection expert blew the whistle, is jailed for 7 years. Prince Harry says his late mother, Princess Diana, would be as thick as thieves with his fiancée, Meghan Markle. Kiwibank pulls its services from an Auckland post shop after 7 armed robberies in the past 12 years. Labour and New Zealand First coalition talk notes become 33 pages because someone reduced the font, and more.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. A mother who overdosed her daughter on anti-seizure medication and filmed her struggling with the side effects has been jailed for more than 7 years. The mother of two, who has name suppression, also tried to suffocate her 9-month-old son. Justice Peters said the woman took her daughter to emergency departments and doctors over 80 times, reporting that she had fevers and seizures. She then gave her daughter an overdose of the medication.
As the Crown says, those videos were disturbing to watch because A was plainly distressed by her condition.
Justice Peters said she expected the mother's offending would cause her daughter ongoing psychological harm. The judge said any future contacts the mother has with her children will be decided by oranga tamariki and experts. An Auckland company that used scare tactics and deliberately difficult maths tests to push parents into buying education software has been fined $351,000. The Auckland Academy of Learning has been sentenced on 11 breaches of the Fair Trading Act in the Auckland District Court. Its door-to-door salespeople had employed scripted hard sell tactics, some of which were dishonest. People who signed up sometimes found it almost impossible to back out if they changed their minds. Judge Noel Sainsbury said it was cynical marketing, attacking people who are vulnerable because of their natural concern for their children. The Commerce Commission had 182 complaints about the company, but says more than 2,400 customers may have been deceived because of the tactics used. High levels of methamphetamine found in Whangarei wastewater confirms the drug is endemic in Northland. Wastewater drug testing has been trialled in Auckland and Christchurch for a year and in Whangarei since August. Residents there are estimated to be using more than 4 times the amount of methamphetamine compared to those living in Christchurch. Based on November's finding, the police estimate nearly 7,700 milligrams of meth is used every week for every 1,000 people living in Whangarei. The Northland District Commander Russell LaPrue says he's not surprised.
I think it's shown us enough to know that we've got a Northland-wide issue, so we're focused on Northland, not just Whangarei. Yes, the wastewater might be just Whangarei, but I think it tells us enough to know that it's endemic in our community and that we need to do something different to address that.
The Northland District Commander Russell LaPrue. An Auckland Post shop owner says he feels like he's been stabbed in the back by Kiwi Bank, which plans to pull its services from his business because of safety concerns. Baksa Desai runs the Wairaka Post shop, which has been robbed 7 times in the past 12 years and will no longer be able to use Kiwi Bank's banking services. He says his business won't be able to survive without the services, which he says are also essential to the local community.
Would the head of retail for NZ Post stand behind the counter, end your 7 robberies, and then come and deliver that same letter saying that you're taking away the services? Can you do that for me? Then I will call, yeah, we are equal. Otherwise, no. We are not equal, we are worlds apart.
Baksa Desai says he's begun a petition to try and get Kiwi Bank to change its mind about cancelling the services. A coroner says a New Zealander collapsed and died in full view of a guardhouse after a fight in a Sydney detention centre. The New South Wales coroner says it took guards 17 minutes to respond after Robert Peihopa collapsed, and they were probably spread too thin. Phil Pennington reports.
2 guards were supervising 60 men in the unit at the Villawood Immigration Centre when the death occurred in April last year. The 42-year-old Peihopa had used methamphetamine hours before, then had a fight, triggering a fatal heart attack. Medical experts judged the fight on its own left only superficial injuries. His collapse was caught on security cameras. The coroner is calling on Australia's Immigration Department and private operator Serco to review staff numbers. The detainee's mother, Hera Peihopa, says Serco displayed arrogant indifference towards her family after the death. This is Phil Pennington.
Residents and authorities in Roxburgh have been nervously watching the sky as the clean-up continues following Sunday's flash floods. Mud and floodwaters spewed into the central Otago township after a concrete culvert was blocked with rocks and debris following a heavy downpour. Central Otago's Mayor Tim Cadogan says contractors are working furiously to clear the culvert and prepare the town's infrastructure for any further rain.
It's a race against time, but you don't know when the finish line is because you don't know when the rain's going to come. And at the moment, just looking around the hill where the problems stem from, there's build-ups of cloud. Now, in central Otago, they can build up, they can go around the back, they can disappear and you don't even know where they're gone, or they can all hold hands and come down in an absolute bucket.
Tim Cadogan, the Met Service, says a severe thunderstorm watch remains in place. It's 5:05. To sport, and Canterbury Cricket has confirmed it's had informal discussions with suspended England all-rounder Ben Stokes about playing in the upcoming domestic 50-over and T20 competition. Stokes missed the first Ashes test against Australia while he awaits the result of a police investigation relating to an altercation he was involved in outside a Bristol pub in September. Clay Wilson reports.
Ben Stokes is currently en route to New Zealand to catch up with family in his city of birth, Christchurch. Stokes was spotted at Heathrow Airport earlier today with cricket gear in tow, sending social media abuzz with speculation the 26-year-old could be set for Ashes action. The England Cricket Board says it's aware Stokes is heading to New Zealand to visit family, but saying nothing has been confirmed relating to him rejoining the England squad. Canterbury Cricket Chief Executive Jeremy Kerwin says the CCA Board and New Zealand Cricket will consider Stokes' availability for the Ford Trophy and 2020 Super Smash, but won't make further comment on the deliberations. Canterbury are the defending Ford Trophy champions and face Otago in the first match of the summer in Rangiora on Sunday. This is Clay Wilson.
The US Open semi-finalist American Sam Querrey has filled the final spot for next year's ASB Tennis Classic in Auckland. 5 top 20 players are set to be involved. And the New Zealand women's football team plays Thailand in the second match of their 2-game series in Bangkok tonight. The two sides played out a 0 draw in their opening encounter. And that's the news.
Celebrating an engagement.
She didn't even let me finish. She said, yes, I can, yes. And then there was hugs and I had the ring on my finger and can I give you the ring? She was, oh, yes, the ring.
Celebrating new arrivals.
There's a lot of evidence saying that what's best for baby is having the full 26 weeks, but I reckon you could make a really good argument that what's best for baby is also some flexibility for parents.
Black Ferns celebrated with World Rugby Honours.
The skill level, the intensity and the personalities in the team have all kind of come together to create this wonderful moment.
Start your day with Morning Report Guy on Espana in the Hingarangi Forbes weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, choosing the safest cars and avoiding younger motorists driving in a danga over summer. And after 10, the story of the 49ers, the New Zealand cricket team tour of England in 1949, as seen through the eyes of the captain Walter Hadley and written by his son Sir Richard. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight. Tomorrow, Northland, Auckland, Coromandel and Bay of Plenty, partly cloudy with isolated showers. But showers more widespread about western Northland and inland Bay of Plenty tomorrow with possible thunderstorms. Waikato to Manawatu, including the central high country. Also Gisborne to Wairarapa. Scattered showers mainly inland during the afternoons and evenings, where some will be heavy and thundery with localised downpours and hail. Orowhenua to Wellington, also across to the South Island, Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland. Fine near the coast apart from areas of low cloud or fog tonight and tomorrow morning. However, afternoon and evening showers inland, especially about the ranges with isolated thundery downpours and hail. Bulla Westland and Fiordland, fine apart from isolated afternoon and evening showers about the ranges and cloudy at times for the Chatham Islands. RNZ National, it's 9 minutes past 5 and you're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna Thomas. We begin tonight with breaking news. Quite an extraordinary announcement from the Health Minister, Dr. David Clark. It has just arrived. Waikato DHB chair resigns. Its headline: Health Minister Dr. David Clark has accepted Waikato District Health Board Chair Bob Simcock's resignation this afternoon. His resignation as chair and board member will take effect immediately, the statement says. It was the right decision for him to make under the circumstances, says Dr. Clark In his statement, the DHB's Deputy Chair, Sally Webb, has agreed to step in as Acting Chair, which I'm grateful for. I'm quoting David Clark here, and have confidence she will manage the role to a high standard while I consider long-term options. Of course, we have been looking at this at length on Checkpoint. The expenses of former CEO Nigel Murray over more than $200,000 over 3 years. Quite extraordinary expenditure of public money. We had an interview scheduled with Mr Simcock tomorrow, but this was cancelled by a PR agency this afternoon. The Health Minister, David Clark, is not available to be interviewed. We're going to keep trying him, but joining us now is elected board member Dave McPherson. Dave, welcome to the program. You have been calling for this resignation and you have been agitating hard on the board for accountability. When did you find out this was happening?
About 5 minutes ago, John, when Checkpoint rang me, so I hadn't heard it before from anyone. Look, it's the right thing to have happened too late, but now I think we've got a chance of starting to move forward.
So you found out from our producer, Bridget Burke, when she phoned you?
That's correct, John, yeah.
Are you surprised by that, given the Minister's statement that the DHB's Deputy Chair, Sally Webb, will be taking over?
I am a little surprised. Having said that, I think Sally is the right person to take over in the short run. I think she's experienced and knows where the rest of the board members are coming from, and there's a better track record of accountability with her board that she's currently chair of in the Bay of Plenty than there has been recently with ours. But having said that, one of the problems we've had is the board not being kept informed of things, so that's not the greatest start.
No, it's not. So you have an acting chair and you've lost your CEO. And this is a this is a DHB under immense pressure because there is a real sense that there isn't enough money to do the clinical work that people at the coalface, for want of a better term, want to do. You need leadership, don't you?
We absolutely need strong leadership, and we need strong advocacy with the government as well, because I don't think we're the only DHB that's facing that sort of cost pressure. One of the problems with the board previously has been that we wouldn't actually put our best foot forward in telling the then previous minister what the problems were with this. I think now we've got a chance of doing that.
Absolutely. If we go back to 2014, the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists warned against hiring Dr Nigel Murray. The Labour List MP based in Hamilton, Sue Moroney, warned against hiring Dr Nigel Murray. Annette King, who had previously been a health minister, warned against hiring Dr Nigel Murray. Have you, and of course at the time, and this is absolutely material in terms of his resignation, Bob Simcock heard those warnings and said, I will keep an eye on him. Now, have you any idea why, despite the advice against hiring him, Dr Murray was taken on as CEO of the DHB?
I feel that they took on the only person that was available to them, which is definitely not a good enough reason. I wasn't on the board at that time, so I didn't hear the conversations, but it was clearly a decision that wasn't correct. And not just in hindsight, I think they had the reason to know it wasn't correct at the time. I don't believe that all the warnings given to the chair at the time were actually passed on to the then board members, from what I've heard from them. So I think that that's one of the things we've absolutely got to improve. We've got to know what the new chair hears, when they hear it, so that we can all form part of a team making the decision, instead of being put in the back foot and being put in the position of trying to back up someone when we don't know what the heck's going on.
Dave McPherson, thank you so much. So to summarise, you think this is the right decision?
Yeah, absolutely the right decision to resign, for Bob Simcock to resign, and I think the right interim decision for Sally Webb to take over. I don't think even Sally wants that to go on long term, but I think right now she's someone that knows what's going on the board, and I believe she's got confidence of other board members. She's got my confidence that she can start to help turn things right.
Dave McPherson, who is an elected board member on the Waikato DHB board. Just to repeat, Waikato District Health Board Chair Bob Simcock has just resigned. The fallout, of course, of Dr Nigel Murray's expenditure. It is 14 and a half minutes past 5. You are with Checkpoint. That was breaking news. Let's turn to other news. And this is a story that we are bringing to you. The mother of a 23-year-old man who died after using synthetic drugs says they begged and begged to get him onto a drug rehabilitation program and were repeatedly told there weren't enough beds. Memphis Pittman died just over a fortnight ago, one of 20 deaths associated with synthetic drugs in the past 6 months. Already in the mental health system for treatment for schizophrenia, his mother said they had access to doctors who cared and wanted to help, but Memphis needed residential care and no beds were available. The country's 20 DHBs contract a total of 480 beds for drug and alcohol treatment nationwide. But in the most recent financial year, 50,000 people were seen by alcohol and drug services. So that's a ratio of 1 bed for every 104 people seeking help or referred for help by police, the courts and social agencies. Memphis and his family asked for 8 months and he made it to the top of the waiting list in the week before he died. His mother is now demanding the new government invest more in drug and alcohol care so lives can be changed and indeed saved. Natasha Sadler told me about her much-loved, music-loving son.
Prior to his mental illness, Memphis had the world in his hand. He was a brilliant, articulate young man. Those who knew him would testify to his amazing ability to sing. People gravitated towards him. He had just this way about him, soft, humble. He really was an amazing young man. If you speak to anybody about him, they'll tell you how wonderfully soft-hearted he was. Great big laugh. But his mental illness took a toll on the last 4 years of his life.
And he was formally diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Yes, he had to have a slow-release injection 3 weekly of paliperidone, which is an antipsychotic drug.
Right, so the way that works is to forgive this awful shorthand, but it just quietens the voices.
It quietens the voices in his head. So for the past 3 years, whilst I've been living in this home, part of our day-to-day routine was helping to keep our boy well and alive. The voices were so bad, they would tell him he was nothing, he was worthless. So all of the beautiful talent that we'd seen come out of our son up until that time became diminished, and a new Memphis sprung forth from his illness.
And the new Memphis tried synthetics.
The new Memphis used synthetics to shut the voices off. He often told the doctors and his nurse, who was amazing, and his support team, who were absolutely stunning, he told them that the medicine didn't work. It would dim the voices for a period, and from an external perspective I could see the dimming because his behaviours changed. However, around about the 3rd week his behavioural patterns would change. He'd become more easily agitated, he'd yell at the voices, he'd swear at the voices, and we just became accustomed to that pattern, and we knew, okay, it's nearly injection time. He used synthetics. He told me, he told the doctors, he told his grandfather. That was the only thing that would shut the voices off. It switches everything off. Ultimately, it switched off internal organs for my son, and he died. You know, his heart stopped beating, and he became increasingly addicted. It's such an addictive drug.
And everyone was aware.
Everyone was aware.
And you talked to him about it? He talked to you about it,
didn't he? We talked openly about it. He was a very honest kid.
And you desperately tried to get him into some form of rehab, right?
Yes, we did. So he was on the waiting list for 8 months. On the week he died, he was at the top of the waiting list. It was too long. I continuously got people telling me there's just no beds, there aren't any beds.
So he was a formally diagnosed schizophrenic, receiving treatment for a schizophrenic.
Yes.
He and you and everyone were totally open about his addiction to synthetics, and he was on a waiting list for 8 months. And at the end of the 8 months, he died.
Yes. It's not good enough.
It's about resources, isn't it?
It is about resources. I did everything I could in my power as a single mum who works my butt off to put a roof over my kids' heads and to put food in their bellies. I did everything I could. There are insurmountable amount of meetings I attended with counsellors, with nurses, with doctors, with inpatient psychologists about getting my son help, and the only response I got was there aren't enough beds. That's not good enough. What it means is we just need money put there. Stop building prisons. Stop building prisons. Build places where you can get our people well. I'd spoken to his medical team. I said, if you don't admit my son, he's going to die. 6 weeks ago, 2 of his friends died using synthetics. 6 weeks ago. At that time, I begged for him to be admitted into the hospital because I knew he would keep using as a way to block out and deal with the death of his friends.
And his schizophrenia.
And mostly his schizophrenia. But, 2 of his friends died using synthetics. And I said, please admit him. We need some help. And he was asking too. He was at the meeting. He's saying, I can't stop. It's got me by the throat. The people selling the stuff know it's got us by the throat too, and they don't care. They just want the money. And he said, I need help. And what was the reply to both he and I? There aren't any beds. That's not good enough. Make some beds, find some beds. My son died. That's the ultimate cost to pay. Will you listen now? Will they listen now?
Natasha Sadler, we've tried to get a response to the issue of bed shortages from the new Health Minister, David Clark, who's obviously been busy today. We haven't heard back from his office, but we will return to this subject and we will talk to the Minister about it. We also wanted to confirm the extent of the problem. So we spoke to Roger Brooking, a clinical manager for ADAC, who do alcohol and drug assessment and counselling and are a preferred provider of alcohol and drug assessments for both the courts and the parole board. So how difficult is it for someone like Memphis to get access to residential treatment?
It's extremely difficult. In general, what often happens is that when someone has both an addiction and an underlying mental health problem, which is the case in about 70% of these situations, you refer them to mental health and they say, we can't treat this person until they stop drinking or taking drugs. You refer them to alcohol and drug treatment and they say, we can't fix this person until his mental health gets sorted out. So, I'm generalising, but frequently what happens as a result is that people just fall through the cracks.
How bad is the problem in terms of the shortage of beds for people who desperately need them?
Well, if you're talking in the community, I'm not even sure how many residential beds there are, but to give you another example of how difficult it is, Moana House in Dunedin is a 17-bed residential treatment centre, and they kind of specialise in trying to help these guys coming out of prison. About less than a year ago, I had some communication with the Claire Aitken, the director down there, and she said there was over 100 people on their waiting list. And because these are guys with long-term, mental health, personality issues and addictions, the average length of stay is about 8 months. So I said, so how long is it going to take you, if I refer somebody to you, how long is it going to take before they might get in? And she said, well, I could read you the email. It says 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
That's Roger Brooking, who is a clinical manager for ADAC, and we will return to this subject over the next few days. Let's go to other news now, 24 minutes past 5. Prince Harry says his late mother, Princess Diana, would be over the moon and instant best friends with his fiancée as he and American actor Meghan Markle announced their engagement today after much speculation. The couple, who met last year, appeared briefly at a photo shoot at Kensington Palace and said they plan to marry in the next 6 months. Bridget Burke reports.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle on their first official photo shoot at the sunken garden at Kensington Palace following news of their engagement.
Congratulations from all of us.
How are you both feeling?
Also delighted, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry's father, Prince Charles.
I hope they'll be very happy indeed, is all I can say.
36-year-old Markle, wearing an elegant white belted trench coat, clutched her future husband's arm tightly during their brief appearance. In the couple's first official television interview with the BBC's Michelle Hussein, the actor said the 33-year-old prince had proposed earlier this month over roast chicken.
Just an amazing surprise. It was so sweet and natural and very romantic. He got on one knee.
Of course.
Was it an instant yes from you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I could barely let you finish proposing. I said, can I say yes now?
She didn't even let me finish. She said, can I say yes, can I say yes now? And then there was hugs and I had the ring in my finger and I was like, can I give you the ring? And she goes, oh yes, the ring.
The couple said they first met in July of last year after being set up on a blind date by a mutual female friend. Prince Harry said he'd never heard of his fiancée before their first date and had never watched her Suits television series, something Markle said she would give up for her new life as a member of the royal family in the UK.
It's a new chapter, right? And also keep in mind, I've been working on my show for 7 years. So we were very, very fortunate to be able to have that sort of longevity on a series. And for me, once we hit the 100-episode marker, I thought, you know what, I have ticked this box and I feel really proud of the work I've done there, and now it's time to, as you said, work as a team with you. Yeah.
But do you have that sense of responsibility, Prince Harry, for what you're asking Meghan to do?
Of course, that sense of responsibility was essentially from day one, or maybe a couple of months in, when I suddenly realised actually this is, you know, I know that I'm in love with this girl, and I hope that she's in love with me. But we still had to sit down on the sofa, and I still had to have some pretty, frank conversations with her to say, look, what you're letting yourself in for is, it's a big deal, and it's, it's not, it's not easy for anybody. But I know that, at the end of the day, she chooses me, and I choose her. And therefore, whatever we have to tackle together or individually will always be us together as a team. So, I think she's capable.
So nicely said, isn't it?
I don't know. She's capable of anything. And together, as I said, there's a hell of a lot of stuff and work that needs doing. At the moment, for us, it's going to be making sure that our relationship is always put first. But no, look, both of us have passions for wanting to make change for good, and with lots of young people running around the Commonwealth, that's where we're going to spend most of our time.
Prince Harry, who is fifth in line to the throne, said he's sought the blessing of Markle's parents Thomas Markle and Doria Ragland. Thomas Markle is an Emmy Award-winning lighting director, and his former wife Doria is a social worker and a yoga instructor. Meghan is their only child. The future bride, who is divorced from film producer Trevor Engelson, said she'd met most of Prince Harry's extended family, including the Queen.
She's an incredible woman.
And the corgis took to you straight away.
That's true.
For the last 33 years being barked at. This one walks in absolutely nothing.
Just laying on my feet during tea. It was very sweet.
And it's just like, oh.
Luxury wedding planner Sarah Haywood says the Queen's approval is a stark demonstration of how much the monarchy has changed.
Well, of course, 50 years ago, this wedding couldn't have happened, but a lot has changed since then, and the royal family has become a very modern 21st century royal family. Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, of course, has married a divorcee, so it's really not a problem. Other of the Queen's children have married divorcees, so it really isn't a problem. What the British public think about it remains to be seen.
But news of the engagement was met with mostly excitement around London.
I think it's very exciting because everyone's been waiting a long time for Harry and see who he settles down with. And I'm very excited because it's my first time in London and a bit of a royalist from Australia, so very exciting.
I mean, it was very different in the old days when you think of poor old Princess Margaret wasn't allowed to marry the man she loved because, was he divorced or something? There was something about it. So she had to marry somebody else, and then that was ended in a divorce. Now they can marry who they like, and good luck to them.
In her hometown of Toronto, Markle's previous neighbours were thrilled with the news.
Yeah, I thought it was a great thing. Like, you just want to be proud of them and hope that they're happy and lead a good life. That's all.
Good for her. She was a really good neighbour. I mean, I saw her around the neighbourhood and saw her friends around the neighbourhood, the guys with the big cars, but never saw the prince. So, good for her. It's a happy story, isn't it?
It had to happen.
Either that or they were going to split up. I mean, it's not going to go on forever. They're not that young. You know, I mean, time is flying, so what can I tell you?
I hope they have a wonderful life together. Marriage isn't always easy, so I hope they can weather the ups and downs of it, and being in the public eye can't be easy.
I think it's great because it does put Toronto on the map again. In a good way.
Prince Harry said he'd chosen a yellow gold custom-made engagement ring for his future wife with a special connection to his mother, the late Princess Diana.
The ring is obviously yellow gold because that's her favourite, and the main stone itself are sourced from Botswana, and the little diamonds either side are from my mother's jewellery collection to make sure that she's with us on this crazy journey together.
What do you think your mother would have thought of Meghan or said about Meghan?
Oh, they'd be thick as thieves, without question. I think she would be over the moon, jumping up and down, you know, so excited for me. But then, as I said, would have probably been best friends with Meghan. So no, it is days like today when I really miss having her around and miss being able to share the happy news. But you know, with the ring and with everything else that's going on, I'm sure she's with us. I'm sure she's with us, yeah, you know, jumping up and down somewhere else.
The couple plans to marry next spring. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.
Messages of congratulations are pouring in from around the world. Of course, it's already being billed as the hottest wedding of 2018, of course. And as Anusha Bradley reports, some New Zealanders might be on the invitation list.
It happened a few weeks ago, earlier this month, here at our cottage. Just a standard, typical night for us.
It's a cosy night. What were we doing? Just roasting chicken and
roasting
having
trying to roast chicken.
Trying to roast a chicken, and it was just an amazing surprise. It was so sweet. And
the moment Prince Harry asked Meghan Markle to be his wife, and since going public with the news, the congratulations have been pouring in, including from our very own PM, a self-confessed Republican.
You can hold those views and still be very excited about weddings, which is how I describe myself. It's incredibly exciting. Who isn't moved by someone's impending marriage, particularly one of this scale? I think it'll be an extraordinary event. Just this morning I've signed out a letter of congratulations to the couple.
But the government won't be sending them a gift just yet.
When it comes to engagements, the tendency is not to send gifts for engagements, but more often for the wedding itself. So that gives us plenty of time to think about what might feel appropriate and suitably Kiwi.
And while it's uncertain whether Miss Ardern will attend the spring wedding, she will be in London in April for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
It would really very much depend on the scheduling.
The National Party leader, Bill English, has also offered his congratulations.
It just makes people happy. I hope it all works out for them. We wish them all the best.
The chair of Monarchy New Zealand, Sean Palmer, says the fifth in line to the throne would have had to get permission from the Queen to marry Miss Markle. And he says the fact their engagement has made headlines around the world shows just how relevant the royal family still is.
I think there hasn't been a change in that level of interest ever. Unless perhaps we say that the interest is going up slightly. You know, this is one of the most famous people in the world, a member of the most famous family in the world. But also, this is New Zealand's royal family that we're talking about. And the monarchy is very good for this country.
And these Wellingtonians couldn't agree more.
Well, I think it's good. I like both of them.
You like both of them?
Yes.
Why do you like both of them?
Well, I think Harry's a pretty good sort of a bloke. He's been to Afghanistan twice, he's done his thing. And well, I don't know much about her, but she's sort of American and she's nice.
Well, I'm English. So, yes, I think it's lovely, yes. Yes, very pleased with them both, yes.
What do you like about those two?
Well, he's a bit off the wall, isn't he? And, well, I don't know anything about her except that she's an actress in America, isn't she?
Good on Harry, you know, doing it for all the gingers out there, so, yeah. Yeah, what do you like about Harry? He's an inspiration to someone like myself, you know, yeah. Why is that? You know, a red-headed man taking over the world, yeah.
Social media pundits are celebrating Meghan Markle's mixed-race heritage, but she's not the first to wed a royal. That honour goes to Gary Lewis, a New Zealander of Māori descent and a former sheep shearer from Gisborne. Mr Lewis married Lady Davina Windsor, the daughter of the Queen's cousin, in 2004, The couple attended Prince William's wedding in 2011. Former All Blacks captain Richie McCaw famously turned down an invite to that one, but he and fellow All Black Dan Carter are both mates with Prince Harry, so they could well be on the guest list for his big day. Victoria Cross recipient Willie Apiata, who's been closely involved in the Prince's Invictus Games for injured soldiers, could also make the cut. Former Prime Ministers, Governor-Generals and High Commissioners to London have all attended royal weddings in the past, but the current ones will just have to wait and see if an invite to this one turns up in their letterbox. For Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
25 to 6 you are with Checkpoint. Everything running a bit late tonight because of that breaking news we began with. So let's get straight to the headlines with Anna Thomas.
The chairman of the Waikato District Health Board, Bob Simcock, has resigned effective immediately. The Health Minister, David Clark, says Mr Simcock has also resigned as a board member. It follows growing pressure on the DHB over the expenses of the former Chief Executive Nigel Murray. Dr Clark says he believes an interim report from the State Services Commission investigation into Dr Murray's spending will be provided early next year. A mother who overdosed her daughter on anti-seizure medication and filmed her struggling with the side effects has been jailed for more than 7 years. The mother of two, who has name suppression, also tried to suffocate her 9-month-old son. Justice Peters said the woman took her daughter to emergency departments and doctors more than 80 times, reporting that she had fevers and seizures. The judge said any future contact the mother has with her children will be decided by oranga tamariki and experts. The police are searching for 3 foreign nationals who've gone missing from a South Korean fishing vessel in Bluff. The Southern Ocean docked at Bluff yesterday afternoon with a dead Chinese crewman aboard, the casualty of an accident at sea. The police say the 3 men left a vessel as it docked. They have referred the death of the Chinese crew member to the coroner. An Auckland company that used scare tactics and deliberately difficult maths tests to push parents into buying education software has been fined $351,000. The Auckland Academy of Learning has been sentenced on 11 breaches of the Fair Trading Act in the Auckland District Court. Labour MPs have blocked National's attempt in Parliament to push forward its own legislation making paid parental leave more flexible. The government has now agreed to adopt National's policy of allowing both parents to take time off together, but will instead introduce its own legislation early next year. And those are the headlines.
Let's turn to business news now with Giles Beckford, who was almost certain to get an invitation to the royal wedding. Giles, lots of talk today about removing loan-to-value ratios on home loan borrowers. You can discuss that with Meghan and Harry. I'm sure they'll be fascinated. We're expecting to hear something from the Reserve Bank.
We are indeed. I might be playing football that day, you never know. But
like Richie.
We'll wait and see. Or doing my hair, but never mind. Yes, lots of clamour about the loan-to-value ratios is prompted by the fact the Reserve Bank has its 6-monthly financial stability report coming out tomorrow morning. The bank has already said, it said a couple of weeks ago, that it would give some indication there what's to happen to the LVRs. Remembering they were brought in 4 years ago to take the pressure off the banks. Everybody says, oh, they're there to cool the housing market, but the Reserve Bank's always said that they would take the pressure off the banks to stop the banks lending too much money to low deposit lenders.
Yeah.
And it's, in particular, it put quite strict limits on property investors a year or so ago. And that's really had the effect, of course, in helping to cool the demand and the ability of people to buy houses. The bank's made it quite clear that it will not be removing them in one fell swoop. Quite clearly, they're going to publish a timetable tomorrow. They'll probably allow the banks to perhaps lend a little bit more to low deposit borrowers, and they'll perhaps signal that they may start taking the LVR restrictions off perhaps from the middle of next year. What happens with property investors, we'll wait to see. I think the bank will want to be cautious. It might well say we will remove the restrictions on property investors at the same time as the government starts to impose further restrictions in the tax field on property investors or other moves to restrict property investment and the hot housing there. For the Reserve Bank, the worry has always been about the housing market, about the stability of the financial system, and we can expect to hear that stated again tomorrow.
Right, Giles, we began there by talking about loan-to-value ratios. Can you tell us what happened to debt-to-income ratios? The Reserve Bank was hoping to get permission to have that in its armoury, right? Where is that at?
Indeed. Well, remember, Stephen Joyce was about as enthusiastic about it as a sort of a Scottish forward facing the All Blacks. But frankly, that was always doomed to fail. The Reserve Bank says it would like to have them in its armoury of macro-prudential tools, another weapon to use at times of stress. It got sent away for a study into the cost-benefit analysis and the value of them. I have to say, when I spoke to Grant Robertson shortly after he took office as Minister of Finance, he wasn't that enthusiastic about them as well.
Right.
I would think that we can kiss those ones goodbye, and certainly the Reserve Bank will be whistling a long time before they get debt-to-income ratios and their weapons.
Thanks, Giles. What happened on the markets? I haven't caught up with them.
The share market, which hit a record high yesterday, has given some of it back today, down 35 points, 8,141. That's about a 0.4% drop. For the New Zealand dollar, it is sitting at 69.3 US cents and 91.1 Australian.
Giles Beckford, our excellent business editor, thank you very much indeed. Let's turn to the story that has been in the news throughout the afternoon. A mother took her daughter to the doctors and emergency departments over 80 times before a child protection expert blew the whistle and police were called in. Authorities uncovered a history of false reporting by the mother, who suffered Munchausen syndrome by proxy that resulted in her subjecting her daughter to invasive medical tests and being put on dangerous medication. They also discovered she'd tried to suffocate her 9-month-old son before calling an ambulance to complain he had breathing difficulties. Today, the mother of two was jailed for more than 7 years. Our Auckland Court reporter Edward Gay filed this report.
The mother, who can't be named to protect the identity of her two children, began taking her daughter to the doctors, complaining she was suffering fevers and later seizures. Justice Peters said the child, aged under 5 years, was put on strong medication and subjected to invasive medical procedures, including blood tests, MRI scans and lumbar punctures. She also spent nights in hospital.
Dr. Kelly's evidence was that these numerous presentations and procedures to which A was subjected ran the risk of institutionalising A and of engendering within her a sense that she was unwell when she was not.
The mother also overdosed her daughter on the anti-seizure medication and filmed her daughter as she lost control of her arms and legs.
As the Crown says, those videos were disturbing to watch because A was plainly distressed by her condition.
Another charge related to a specific overdose.
The recording of the 111 call you made to summons an ambulance was played to the jury. You sounded cheerful and jovial, saying to the operator on several occasions that A was acting as if she was drunk. You did not sound panicked or anxious.
She also attempted to suffocate her 9-month-old son on 2 occasions, filming him as he came to. The paramedics found him blue and admitted him to Starship Hospital.
The doctors at Starship became suspicious of you after that, because they were unable to find a cause for the event that B had undoubtedly suffered, and ordered the event recur while he was at Starship. That led the medical personnel to conclude that the life-threatening event that B had suffered had been caused by something else, in fact by you.
Both children were put into the care of Oranga Tamariki, but the mother's offending didn't stop there. While out on bail and during a supervised visit with her son, she fed him a button battery. Thankfully, it passed through the boy's system, but there was a real risk it could have become stuck and burned through. It was a matter of good fortune that he didn't experience real harm. The Crown Prosecutor Mark Harborough said the case was one of the most serious of its kind and noted the mother continues to deny the offences.
What is different and perhaps unfortunate about this case, perhaps tragic, is that the help cannot begin in a meaningful way until Ms.
Acknowledges it
and begins on a long road I don't think there's going to be any bones about that between my learned friend and I. There's going to be a long road to rehabilitate here.
He asked for a much higher sentence, pointing out that in 2012, Parliament had increased the maximum jail term from 5 to 10 years. The mother's lawyer, Sue Gray, said the offending came from her client's mental health disorder. She's only recently been diagnosed with factitious disorder, once referred to as Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Clearly, her mental health issues are causative of this offending. She has no previous history.
Miss Gray said her client had already been assaulted in prison and was now in voluntary segregation. In sentencing, Justice Peters said the mother was a good parent in many respects. Her children were well clothed, happy and cheerful. The mother wept as Justice Peters told her she'd now miss out on her children's early schooling.
A vulnerable and defenceless child must be able to rely on their parent above anyone else to love and care for them. Your offending had the potential to occasion physical harm to A, and I expect that she will suffer psychological harm as a result of her abrupt and unexplained separation from you.
The judge took time off the woman's sentence to recognise her mental health issues.
30% is appropriate and borders on the generous.
The judge said any future contact the mother has with her children will be decided by oranga tamariki and experts. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi ko Edward Gay ahau.
14.5 to 6 on Checkpoint. The central Otago town of Roxburgh is racing to clear up from Sunday's flash flood despite more rain today. The town's north end was covered in mud and water by the flood, which filled, then poured out of Reservoir Creek through about a dozen properties. And that's made for a hard, dry day. Mud turning to dust. The ground is very hard underneath. Our Otago Southern reporter Ian Telfer filed this report just before the rain started falling again.
First the rain, then the mud, today the dust, as the silt from the flood blew around the town. The water tankers dotted around have become community meeting points, as residents face their third day without tap or wastewater. Locals remain stoic, but the novelty of the weekend's weather is wearing thin.
Sort of just feels a bit drab, yeah, the whole sort of feel, but very lucky that nobody was injured with all those rocks coming down the hill.
The stream of residents is keeping tanker operators like Warren Clinch busy.
It's flat out, it doesn't stop. I've gone through probably 7,000 or 8,000 litres in the last couple of days since I've been here. It's just a steady stream one after the other. It's surprising.
Mr Clinch says locals have used whatever they can to take water back to their homes.
You name it, buckets, washing baskets, watering cans, jug, anything that can hold water.
But it's the water that might come again from above that's the biggest worry. Down in Reservoir Creek, the diggers are in a race against time to get it clear. And the people living next to the drain are getting quietly nervous again. One man, Marty, is clearing drains and filling sandbags outside his partner's holiday home, with the silt Sunday's storm brought to his door. He says it looks like more rain is coming.
We've got bags there ready to sandbag the place. So if it does rain and if that creek doesn't hold it again, and same thing's going to happen. So it depends what comes in. But the forecast saying they're good for Roxburgh. So.
Central Otago's Mayor, Tim Cadogan, says the clean-up's going well, but he's keeping an eye on the skies.
The thing I'm most worried about is if the rain that comes this afternoon's predicted. If that stays away, then I'm pretty relaxed. But if that comes, then we're going to have some issues. It's just a question of how much rain causes how many issues.
The state highway is expected to reopen later today and water should follow tomorrow. But some, like Miller's Flat farmer Alan Parker, are still getting over Sunday's drama.
I jumped out with a pair of pliers, out of my vehicle with a pair of pliers in my hand, and went and started cutting wires to get the stock out. And within 30 seconds to a minute, the water came up about 2 metres. So I went to the paddock with dry feet, and I came up and it was basically up to my waist. And I saved about 30 cattle. It was just like a torrent.
The flash flood was unlike anything he's seen before.
Unbelievable. Like, the water was just on top of you. Bang. Willows were cracking. Cows were going crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it again.
Met Service says thunderstorms are likely tonight and the town's on a severe storm watch. In Roxburgh for Checkpoint, Ian Telfer.
A company that tricked thousands of parents into thinking their children were failing at maths so it could sell them education software has been fined $350,000. The Auckland Academy of Learning has been sentenced on 11 charges of breaching the Fair Trade Act. Rowan Quinn has more.
Judge Noel Sainsbury said the offending was deliberate, premeditated and cynical. Working off a script, sales reps gave children a maths test, saying it was set a year below their school level. In fact, it was a more difficult test that was not based on the New Zealand curriculum. When it came back marked with lots of mistakes, many parents were tricked into believing their children were failing. Judge Sainsbury said that caused some to panic.
A common theme that I have read is how guilty parents felt that they were somehow failing their children, that they needed to buy this product to somehow make up for that. There is reference in the victim impact statements to families who have very little, cutting back on basics, even food, to meet these payments, because they felt that is what they should be doing for their children.
Once locked into a contract, it was difficult for people to back out. Some said they found it impossible. Judge Sainsbury said the salespeople didn't tell parents they could ditch the deal during the cooling off period allowed by law for door-to-door sales. The Commerce Commission received 180 complaints, but Judge Sainsbury said all 2,400 people who bought the software were probably victims of the tactics. He said the offending was very serious.
It was planned and deliberate. It was cynical marketing, attacking people who are vulnerable because of their natural concern for their children.
The company is still operating, still selling the same software. However, its lawyer says the quality of the program was never in doubt and the company's changed its sales tactics. She argued that the negative publicity from the case and a hefty fine could send it under, but Judge Sainsbury was not buying that argument.
If this fine means that this company is not viable, then that is the consequence of egregious misconduct, and so be it.
The director and sole shareholder, Gordon McPherson, was in court. RNZ tried to talk to him outside court, but he refused to answer any questions. I Tamaki Magodo, more Checkpoint, ko Rowan Quinn DNA.
After surviving 3 robberies at gunpoint, an Auckland post shop owner says he's now been stabbed in the back by Kiwibank, which plans to pull its services from his business. Baksa Desai has run the Wairaka post shop for the past 12 years, but last week received a letter from Kiwibank saying they would be cancelling services due to security concerns. Mr Desai says that will put him out of business. Nita Blake-Person reports.
The Mount Roskill store was flat out this afternoon and Mr Desai was helping customers with postal services, banking queries and loan information. They were outraged to hear the Kiwibank part of his store would be closing next month, just days before Christmas.
Yeah, it would be extremely inconvenient and it's a good local place to come to get your bills paid.
I just can't believe it, how stupid, because we've got nothing else here, so where is the nearest place a person could go who doesn't have a car?
This is a huge service to this impoverished community down here in Mount Roskill. Yeah.
The store has been robbed 7 times in the past 12 years. The most recent was in August last year when Mr Desai had a gun pointed at him.
I would not call myself brave, but I'm gutsy because I've had 3 robberies at gunpoint. One of them, they have pointed a gun at my kneecap.
He says he keeps going because he's passionate about his job, but feels targeted by Kiwibank's head office.
Would the head of retail for NZ Post stand behind the counter, end your 7 robberies, and then come and deliver that same letter saying that you're taking away the services? Can you do that for me? Then I will call, yeah, we are equal. Otherwise, no. We are not equal, we are worlds apart.
Mr Desai will no longer be able to use any of Kiwibank's services, which include banking, bill payments, domestic money orders, fines payments and 18+ card applications. He will be able to keep PO boxes and postal services at his store, but he says that's not nearly enough to keep him going. He's tried to speak to Kiwibank about security in his store several times over the years, but says any efforts they've made have been purely lip service.
After they serve the notice to me on Wednesday evening, they send a security guard for the full day on Friday morning from 8:30 to 5:30, and then again Monday from 8:30 to 5:30. Today again there's no one.
In a statement, Kiwibank said it would not discuss specific safety concerns at the store, but it recognised the impact the closure would have on the community. It said it would also be removing its services from an Otara branch due to the same safety concerns. Mr Desai is collecting signatures for a petition which he says he'll pass on to his local MP Michael Wood to try and get Kiwibank to change their mind. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Nita Blake Persona Hou.
High levels of methamphetamine found in Whangarei wastewater is evidence of a growing drug problem in the town. Testing for drugs in wastewater has been trialled at certain sites, Auckland, Christchurch, Whangarei. Jessie Chang reports.
Drug users in Whangarei are estimated to be using nearly 4 times the amount of methamphetamine compared to those in Christchurch. The data has been collected from wastewater facilities over the course of a week each month, and based on the levels of meth found in November, the police estimate nearly 7,700 milligrams of the drug is used per week per 1,000 people in Whangarei. That's the highest figure since testing began in August. But the Northland District Commander Russell Leproux says he's not surprised.
I think it's shown us enough to know that we've got a Northland-wide issue, so we're focused on Northland, not just Whangarei. Yes, the wastewater might be just Whangarei, but I think it tells us enough to know that it's endemic in our community and that we need to do something different to address that.
Mr Leproux says it's not clear why the levels found at testing sites in Whangarei are so high. The wastewater drug testing is part of the Te Ara Oranga project, a joint venture between the police and the Northland District Health Board. It includes a screening and referral trial named Rata Ora, where people who are arrested by police or taken to the emergency department were screened for substance abuse during the course of a week. Ian McKenzie from the Northland DHB's Mental Health and Addiction Services says based on those results they expect 200 meth users would be identified in a year if screening was a permanent fixture.
That's important to us because it allows us to intervene earlier in someone's use cycle, and many people will only seek treatment when they have a crisis with, for example, the law or their health, and so the screening and referral in the emergency department is one of the ways that we can get in early.
Clinician for the Northland DHB and project manager for Te Ara Oranga, Jill Reti, says they've also developed a one-day workshop called the Choice Program to help meth users. She says the project also has a 24-hour referral period for clients.
One of the things that we want to do is to reduce the barriers to treatment. So Te Ara Oranga, one of the key components is engagement.
Ms Reti says since September, more than 100 people have gone through the Choice Program. The Te Ara Oranga project is set to run for 2 years. For Checkpoint, ko Jessie Chang tēnei.
Government and opposition MPs have once again clashed over paid parental leave in Parliament. Labor's now agreed to adopt National's policy of allowing both parents to take time off together, but it made it clear it's going to do so on its own terms, not the opposition's. Our political reporter Craig McCulloch has been in the House this afternoon.
Is there any objection? There is objection.
It was an unruly start to Parliament's proceedings as Labour shot down National's attempt to get its legislation on the agenda. The government's actually on board. It will make paid parental leave more flexible, but on its own terms. And that's not okay by National's Amy Adams.
The government has just guaranteed that parents will not have the flexibility to share their parental leave by the time the planned extension to paid parental leave comes into force on the 1st of July next year.
If the member was so concerned about parents having to wait for more flexibility with paid parental leave, why didn't she raise this matter in her 9 years in government?
Government officials are looking at various options with the goal of introducing legislation early next year. The Workplace Relations Minister, Ian Lees-Galloway, has previously suggested a potential cap on how much of the leave can be shared.
So the Minister, isn't his stated proposal to restrict the amount of time parents could share their paid parental leave to just the first 4 weeks just a continuation of his government knows best, nanny state attempt to control parents' right to choose what best suits their circumstances?
Because the member is inaccurate. No decision has been made about exactly what form of sharing will be proposed. All options are still on the table.
He says the government's pushing on with its own work because National's bill had serious flaws. But Ms Adams doesn't buy it.
Which of the following three statements the Minister has so far given is the real reason for today having this Parliament block parents' right to choose? That the primary caregiver must have the full period to bond with their baby, as he said 2 weeks ago, that it's a good idea but too hard to implement, as he said yesterday, or because he now wishes that he'd come up with the idea and will do his own bill once he gets round to it?
I've never made a statement that I wish it was my own idea.
Paid parental leave is set to jump from 18 weeks to 22 next year, then up to 26 in 2020. Atu iti whare parimata mo te hotaka o te ahiahi ko Craig McCulloch.
You are with Checkpoint on RNZ, about 20 seconds away from the news at 6. We love receiving your feedback. Do text us 2101 or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. We are, of course, on Twitter and on Facebook. However you are joining us, we are delighted to have your company.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The head of the Waikato District Health Board says he has resigned to enable the organisation to move forward. Bob Singcock's resignation is the latest development in an expenses scandal centred on the former DHB Chief Executive Nigel Murray. Our health correspondent Karen Brown reports.
Mr Simcock says he's resigned as chair and from the board to enable it to move on from what he describes as an unfortunate saga. He says it was a hard decision made after considerable thought and reflection about what would be best for the DHB. But Mr Simcock added he was satisfied that at all times he and the board had acted responsibly and without reproach. He says they followed agreed guidelines and processes throughout to ensure good governance. But he said that had been undone by the unfortunate and unauthorised decisions of Dr Murray. The Health Minister David Clark says the resignation is the right decision. Call Karen Brownaho.
A mother who overdosed her daughter on anti-seizure medication and filmed her struggling with the side effects has been jailed for more than 7 years. The mother of two, who has name suppression, also tried to suffocate her 9-month-old son. Justice Peters said the woman took her daughter to emergency departments and doctors over 80 times, reporting that she had fevers and seizures. The judge said another charge related to a specific overdose.
The recording of the 111 call you made to summons an ambulance was played to the jury. You sounded cheerful and jovial, saying to the operator on several occasions that A was acting as if she was drunk. You did not sound panicked or anxious.
Justice Peters, both children were put into the care of Oranga Tamariki, but the mother's offending didn't stop there. During a supervised visit with her son, she fed him a button battery. Labour MPs have blocked National's attempt in Parliament to push forward its own legislation making paid parental leave more flexible. The government has now agreed to adopt National's policy of allowing both parents to take time off together, but it's made it clear it's going to do so on its own terms. The Workplace Relations Minister, Ian Lees-Galloway, says National's bill has serious flaws and the government will instead introduce its own legislation early next year. The National MP Amy Adams says that's disappointing. She says it's clear the only thing actually wrong with the bill from the government's perspective is that it's not in its name. The Deputy Prime Minister has revealed the reason the unreleased coalition document shrank from 38 to 33 pages was the font size was changed. Winston Peters and the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern have again defended the decision not to release notes made during the coalition talks. They say they refer to possible policies the government may act on in the future but have not been committed to. Mr Peters was answering questions in the House from National's Paula Bennett when he offered this information.
I did say when I was the Deputy Prime Minister that it was 38 pages, but of course under a different font it got down to 33.
Order.
Who has abbreviated that 38-page document down to 33 pages?
A staff member aware of modern technology changed the font.
Winston Peters in Question Time. The police are searching for 3 foreign nationals who have gone missing from a fishing vessel in Bluff. The Southern Ocean docked at Bluff yesterday afternoon with a dead crewman aboard, the casualty of an accident at sea. The police are looking for 3 men who left a vessel as it docked. Maritime records show the only fishing vessel in the port was the 63-metre-long Southern Ocean from South Korea. The police have referred the death of the Chinese crew member to the coroner. The Indonesian authorities have extended the closure of the only airport in Bali for a second day because of fears that Mount Agung volcano on the island might erupt. The government is urging more than 100,000 people to move to safety, although only half that number are believed to have heeded the call to evacuate. Anna Baranova is from the NGO Kupanik, which is helping to coordinate the relief effort in the area.
There is a lot of ash coming out from the volcano, and in fact the eruption has now switched from steam-driven phreatic eruptions to full magmatic eruptions. And of course, with this eruption being very ash-heavy, our highest priority right now is to procure and distribute masks.
Mount Agung's last eruption in 1963 killed more than 1,000 people and razed several villages by hurling out pyroclastic material, hot ash and lava. It's 4 minutes past 6. The US Open semi-finalist American Sam Querrey has filled the final spot for next year's ASB Tennis Classic in Auckland. 5 top 20 players are set to be involved. Tournament director Carl Budge says next year's field will be one of the strongest he's put together.
I think it's clearly the best field we've had. It is packed with genuine superstars, the most exciting next wave of talent, and incredibly we have 9 titles, 9 ASB Classic titles within the field that we're announcing today, so it's a pretty stellar lineup.
ASB Classic Tournament Director Carl Budge. It'll take a syndicate $200 million to be competitive at the next America's Cup in 2021, according to Cup great Dennis Connor. Connor, who has both won and lost the Old Mug, is impressed by Team New Zealand's foiling mono-hull plan, but says it will complicate and be expensive to design and build. He also fears it will capsize.
One thing they're going to be doing is they're going to be worried about tipping over. Because if you don't have one of those foils down, what's going to keep you right side up? So all you need is a little failure here. These boats are going to capsize. Where's the riding moment to keep a 100-foot mast on a 75-foot sloop upright?
Dennis Connor. And suspended England all-rounder Ben Stokes is in talks to play for Canterbury in the upcoming domestic 50-over and 2020 competition. Stokes is en route to New Zealand to spend time with family while police investigate an altercation he was involved in outside a Bristol pub in September. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, a profile of Zimbabwe's new leader, Emmerson Mnangagwa. This week's pundit, our historian Peter Clayworth, discusses the rise and fall of the Great Kiwi Weekend, and Elizabeth Turner discusses her doctoral thesis on this Herbs album. What's be happening? What's happening on Nights? Afternoon news at 7 on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel and the Bay of Plenty. Partly cloudy with isolated showers. Showers more widespread about western Northland and inland Bay of Plenty tomorrow with possible thunderstorms. Waikato to Manawatu, including the central high country. Also Gisborne to Wairarapa. Scattered showers, mainly inland during the afternoons and evenings, where some will be heavy and thundery with localised downpours and hail. Horowhenua to Wellington, also Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland. Fine near the coast apart from areas of a low cloud or fog tonight and tomorrow morning. However, afternoon and evening showers inland and especially about the ranges with isolated thundery downpours and hail. For Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine, apart from isolated afternoon and evening showers about the ranges. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy at times. RNZ National, it's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna Thomas. Exactly an hour ago, we began the program tonight with the news that the chair of the embattled Waikato District Health Board had resigned 24 hours after receiving the final report from the Office of the Auditor General into the expenditure and financial practices of the former Chief Executive Nigel Murray. Of course, we have been looking at this at length On Checkpoint over the past couple of weeks, Chief Executive Nigel Murray resigned after spending $200,000 on expenses, travel, meals, accommodation over 3 years. Bob Simcock was appointed chair in 2013. He hired Mr Murray in 2014. Dr Murray resigned on October 5th. A lot of his spending was without approval, sometimes with retrospective approval, or sometimes with details that changed during the course of a trip. Mr Simcock was responsible for signing off on all of the expenditure. Mr Murray travelled internationally while he was also on sick leave. He went to Australia twice in 5 days. He extended international trips with stated business purposes, Audit New Zealand could find no evidence of, and much more. We have, of course, looked at all of this. Just over an hour ago, Waikato DHB's Deputy Chair, Sally Webb, accepted the role as acting chair, and she joins us now. Nice to have you with us on the program. Thank you very much. When did you hear that Mr Simcock had resigned?
I found out that Bob had resigned this afternoon, yes.
And how did you find out?
The board members received a press release from our chair telling us of his decision to resign, and I'm sure that that decision actually will be quite a shock for a lot of people in the organisation, because Bob has been a well-respected chair. However, he's made his decision, and I respect that.
Was it the right decision?
Bob has made his decision on what he believes are the right grounds, and I'm respecting that decision.
You said it was a shock. So what is shocking about it?
I think there'll be a lot of people in the organisation who are very sad to see Bob go. But my focus on acting chair now, John, though, is looking at the future. And I want to get on with supporting our interim chief executive and the staff. I want their focus to come back on to providing health services to the communities we serve. That's what we're there for.
Can we talk about some of the paperwork? What in his statement to you, what did Mr Simcock say were his reasons for resigning?
I'm sure you've seen the press release. It's a one page. There's a number of things there. He says it's a very hard decision. However, he thinks that his going will help get the support and focus back on the organisation so it can do what it does best, delivering great health outcomes.
Can we talk about the final report from the Office of the Auditor General? You've obviously seen it.
I have seen the report from the Office of the Auditor General, yes.
And what does it say?
Well, I think most of the country knows what it says by now. We had a chief executive who went around the normal processes, and that was very unfortunate. Other parts of the report assured the board that it was not endemic through the organisation, and I think that's an important thing.
It is an important thing, although I haven't heard anyone suggesting it is. I mean, this is very particularly about Dr Nigel Murray, isn't it?
Yes, and as you're aware, there is an investigation ongoing, and I don't want to be drawn on that until that investigation is completed.
When will we see that? Do you know when it's going to be made public, that report from the Office of the Auditor General?
My understanding is he will be providing an interim report to the State Services Commissioner in early next year.
Okay, so it's still some time away.
Yeah.
Look, you clearly admire Mr Simcock. You think he was a good chair?
I have respected Bob and the work he's done both in Hamilton and nationally for many years.
Right. The issue, I guess, is one of governance, isn't it? Now, when Nigel Murray became CEO, there were lots of people, and we've spoken to them, who were confused about why he was given the job, and in fact were explicitly speaking out against them. Some were potentially people with a political axe to grind, Sue Moroney, who was a Labour-list MP based in Hamilton, but other people were real medical experts. Ian Powell from the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, who was speaking on behalf of senior clinicians. Now, Bob Simcock said at the time, I hear you, but I will give you my assurance that I will keep an eye on Dr. Nigel Murray, and I will make sure his behaviour is appropriate as CEO. As chairman of the board, didn't at some level the buck stop with him for the reckless expenditure that Nigel Murray embarked on with public money?
John, I think, as I said, there's an ongoing investigation at the moment. I'm not going to be drawn into the content of that or particulars around it.
No, and Mr. Simcock has resigned, and I don't think anyone should respond to this with some kind of glee or relish. But I'm just confused about what boards are there for. Isn't governance and oversight, particularly when public money is involved, precisely the reason you exist?
I've been in governance for a long time. I'm very clear on my own personal responsibilities, and as acting chair of Waikato District Health Board, I intend to carry them out to the fullest.
Okay, and what is now most important as acting chair? What do you think are the immediate priorities for you in this position?
We have a very good interim chief executive. We need to recoup the reputation of the organisation, and we need to ensure the community has confidence in the health services we provide. See, Waikato is not only important for the Waikato community, it serves the communities of Taranaki, Tairāwhiti, Bay of Plenty and Lakes as well. So it's really important that all those communities perceive it to be there doing what it's supposed to be doing, providing high quality health services. And most of the time that's what it does.
And I think the discussions around Dr. Nigel Murray and his expenditure, his travel, the extraordinary, exorbitant amount of time that he was away, his absence from work, his reckless use of public money are quite separate from the quality of the care at the Waikato DHB. And I know there is a real sense there that the clinicians that you are working with do a fantastic job. I don't think that's at all in dispute. Having said that, there have been discussions about the DHB's deficit and pressure on the DHB from both the ministry and the former minister to get the deficit down to zero. Is that an issue you will want to address? Will you go to the new minister and say, hey, we're going to come in over budget, but it's important we're allowed to because the care matters?
I think all DHBs are financially struggling. That's a reality. And it wouldn't matter how much money district health boards had, they would still struggle. There is immense need in the communities. Any conversation I have with the minister in my role as acting chair will be with the minister.
Have you spoken to the minister today?
Not yet, no.
Okay. We were contacted by a PR agency today to say that Bob Simcock was unable to talk to us. Was that a PR agency hired by the DHB for the management of the sort of the public face of this process?
I don't know who contacted you, but there is a firm that we have been using as part of the process.
Are you confident now your board has what it takes to not only restore the faith of the people in your catchment area, who I think actually have a lot of faith in the kind of clinical care they receive, but also the faith of the people who work for you in the kind of supervision, the kind of oversight the board is giving, when Dr. Murray was able to spend so much for so long without anyone saying, stop?
I'm confident that going forward, we will rebuild the organisation's faith in the board, and I'm confident that, in fact, many people in the organisation have faith in the board anyway.
One final question. You have an interim CEO. Is your interim CEO likely to become a permanent one, or will you be looking far and wide for a permanent new CEO?
The board has already decided that we will go into a process looking for a new CEO next year. Timing of that has not been cemented down yet. And when we do that, will be a very inclusive process. I firmly believe that staff within an organisation need to contribute to the types of attributes, skills, and most importantly, the values we need in a chief executive.
Right, so a rigorous, robust and inclusive process. Will you use the same employment agency that got you, Dr. Murray?
I'm not even going to answer that because it's far too early in the piece.
Sally Webb, who has just become acting chair of the Waikato DHB with the resignation of Bob Simcock this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Sally Webb has only been acting chair, we think, for a couple of hours. The announcement made publicly at 5 o'clock. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. It is 90 minutes past 6. More details have emerged about the unreleased notes from the coalition talks between Labour and New Zealand First in Parliament. Most notably, the document went from 38 pages to 33 after a staff had changed the font. Apparently the font was blown up to a larger one during the talks so everyone could read it. But the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and the Deputy Winston Peters have once again been forced to defend the decision not to make the notes public, with National claiming they now look like they have something to hide. Here, looking at the politics of the politics, is our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Ms Ardern has refused requests for the notes to be released on the basis they don't form an official document, a line she was maintaining during this afternoon's parliamentary question time.
The coalition document has been released and is publicly available, but as the Deputy Prime Minister said yesterday, when it comes to other ideas that were discussed, if they are found to be workable and are likely to be progressed, then details will of course be released and made public.
But the National leader Bill English sought more detail.
What is the difference between policies agreed on in the already published coalition document and policies referred to by the Deputy Prime Minister that are agreed in this 33-page document?
Mr Speaker, you can hardly argue that that particular item was secret, given the Deputy Prime Minister said it out loud yesterday while I was standing next to him.
While National's Paula Bennett was questioning Winston Peters, he offered this observation about the size of the document.
I did say when I asked the Deputy Prime Minister that it was 38 pages, but of course, under a different font, it got down to 33. Right?
Very good.
Order.
Who has abbreviated that 38-page document down to 33 pages?
A staff member aware of modern technology changed the font.
After question time, Mr Peters was asked by a reporter why he had changed his mind about releasing the document after saying it would be made public the day after the new government was announced.
Well, the problem with this is you're being sort of absolutist about it. We're working on various things as to their viability and if they stack up in terms of the budgeting commitments we've got, and we don't know exactly what the state of the economy is. I personally don't believe that what the government said about the health of the economy was right. So in that light, you work on policy on the basis, can we stack this up and make it a goer and fund it?
Then there was the question of that font. Was the size or type changed?
Take a wild guess, it was the size.
What font is what font do you use?
Well, if you actually want to sit around a room where people understand quickly, you've got to go to a larger font because they do grasp it more quickly. If you want a smaller font for economy, well, that's what we ended up with. But, it's just a decision that someone made and wisely so.
From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
We're going to end tonight with the royal wedding. After much speculation and anticipation, Prince Harry has announced his engagement to American actor Meghan Markle. The couple, who met on a blind date in July of last year, told the BBC's Michelle Hussein they got engaged over a meal of roast chicken. Well, that's a good way to get engaged, and plan to marry within the next 6 months.
We were introduced actually by a mutual friend who
we should protect her privacy and not reveal too much of that.
And but it was literally through her, and then we met once and then twice back to back, 2 dates in London. Last July, beginning of July, and then it was, I think, about 3, maybe 4 weeks later that I managed to persuade her to come and join me in Botswana, and we camped out with each other under the stars. She came and joined me for 5 days out there, which was absolutely fantastic. So then we were really by ourselves, which was crucial to me to make sure that we had a chance to get to know each other.
Yeah.
But the friend who introduced you, was she trying to set you up?
Yes, it was definitely a setup. It was a blind date.
It was a blind date,
and,
for sure.
And it's so interesting because we talk about it now, and even then, because I'm from the States, you don't grow up with the same understanding of the royal family, and so while I now understand very clearly there's a global interest there, I didn't know much about him, and so the only thing that I had asked her when she said she wanted to set us up was, I had one question. I said, well, is he nice? Because if he wasn't kind, it didn't seem like it would make sense, and so we went and met for a drink, and then I think very quickly into that we said, well, what are we doing tomorrow? We should meet again.
What are we doing tomorrow? Let's meet again. And then it was like, right, diaries. We need to get the diaries out and find out how we're going to make this work, because I was off to Africa for a month. She was working, and we just said, right, where's the gap? And the gap happened to be in the perfect place.
So how much did you, Prince Harry, know about Meghan? Had you seen her on TV?
No, I'd never even heard about her until this friend said Meghan Markle. I was like, right, okay, give me a bit of background. what's going on here? So no, I'd never watched Suits. I'd never heard of Meghan before, and I was beautifully surprised when I walked into that room and saw her, and there she was sitting there. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to up my game. I'm going to sit down and make sure I've got a good chat.
But now that it is all official, Prince Harry, do you have that sense that the combination of the two of you, your different backgrounds, that you together represent something new for the royal family?
I don't know if it's something new. I think it's for me, it's an added member of the family. It's another team player as part of the bigger team, and for all of us, all we want to do is be able to carry out the right engagements, carry out our work, and try and encourage others and the younger generation to be able to see the world in the correct sense, rather than perhaps having a distorted view. So the fact that I fell in love with Meghan so incredibly quickly was a sort of confirmation to me that everything, all the stars were aligned, everything was just perfect. It was this beautiful woman just sort of literally tripped and fell into my life. I fell into her life, and the fact that I know the fact that she'll be really unbelievably good at the job part of it as well, is obviously a huge relief to me, because she'll be able to deal with everything else that comes with it. But no, we're a fantastic team. We know we are, and we hope to over time try and have as much impact for all the things that we care about as much as possible.
I am very excited about that, yeah.
And Meghan, given your acting and the profile you had, you'd already been involved in various causes, you've been an ambassador for UN Women. What about this new role? I mean, you're going to have a bigger platform, a bigger voice. What do you want to do with it?
I mean, can you imagine? No, I'm not a singer. I think what's been really exciting as we talk about the transition of this out of my career but into the role is that, as you said, the causes that have been very important to me I can focus even more energy on, because very early out of the gate I think you realize once you have access or a voice that people are willing to listen to, with that comes a lot of responsibility, which I take seriously. And at the same time, I think in these beginning few months and now being boots on the ground in the UK, I'm excited to just really get to know more about the different communities here, smaller organizations who are working on the same causes that I've always been passionate about under this umbrella. And also being able to go around to the Commonwealth. I think it's just the beginning of a...
There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Well, Robert Jobson is royal editor of the London Evening Standard, dubbed the godfather of royal reporting by the Wall Street Journal. In November of last year, Meghan Markle was the subject of such abuse and harassment, Prince Harry put out a statement calling for it to stop, citing the smear on the front page of a national newspaper, the racial undertones of comment pieces and the outright sexism and racism of social media trolls. So a year on, how have the kind of people that statement was targeting reacted to the news of their engagement?
I think very, very positively generally. There will always be people that, that are going to pick holes in situations, and usually they're the ones that get vocal on media, and digital media, etc. I feel that the general reaction from what I've experienced is extremely positive. This is a modern match, between a mixed-race actress, American girl. Yes, she's been married before, but so what, really? I think Harry's not going to be the king, she's not going to be the queen. the reality is they're quite a long way down the pecking order, and they're getting married for love. Well, they seem very happy to me, and I think that's got to be a positive in any, whether they're royal or not.
Robert, you said the A word and lightning didn't strike, so that's very good. Of course, Wallis Simpson had 2 ex-husbands, I think, and King Edward VIII was very much on the throne when he fell in love with her, so that's somewhat different. Harry's not going to be on the throne, but can we assume it is now okay to marry an American?
I would think it is. You know, you're so far down the line. Next April, when the Cambridges have their next baby, Harry will be 6th in line down the throne, so it's not really that much of an issue. Is it a problem marrying an American? Well, yeah, you have all the connotations of Wallis Simpson and all that, but look, I don't think that's really an issue in any way whatsoever. I think that it would be positive, and certainly there's supposed to be a special relationship between the United States and Britain, and hopefully that will help cement it.
Robert, what I like about this, I'm not sure how I can say this, but they've both had lives. This isn't 19-year-old Diana, completely unworldly and working at a nursery school or something, somehow being sort of recruited into the royal family. This is 2 people in their 30s who've lived a little. And that's kind of refreshing for the royal family, isn't it?
It is, in a way. I know that certain people will probably think it's not, and then some people are more traditionalist and might like it. But I personally think that, Harry's had a lot of sadness in his life, not to mention, at least his mother's death at an early age, and, he was a little boy lost for very much a long time. And while he's a very popular young man, somebody who I think gives a lot of himself to others. He's worked for Invictus Games and for Centre Bali with AIDS and for those fallen soldiers that have got injured. I think he gives a lot, and I think it's only right and proper that he finds someone that he loves and he can marry her, and I think that's fantastic.
Robert, what will they do? What will their jobs be? Because it's not easy being the monarch's sibling. Princess Margaret did charity work, of course, but she had a pretty tough private life. And if we look at Charles's siblings, as Anne, Andrew and Edward, they've struggled, I think, from time to time to really define roles for themselves. So what will Harry and Meghan do?
Well, essentially, I thought it was quite interesting that they will find their own interests